If we fail to be vigilant, we may find.
Hey everybody. Hey there, Karina. How are you doing? Carol and Miranda, Sabrina. I think I've had a couple people come and go. Maybe they weren't sure we were ready to start, so I'll give them another minute or two. For this, you might want to have some paper and something to write with. I did set a firm date for a longer homeschool group call, and that is Wednesday, July 8th at 2 Central. So Wednesday, July 8th, 2 Central. And I'm excited to say that my daughter is going to be joining me. So she was homeschooled kindergarten all the way through high school. She's now in college. She's going to be a junior. And she's going to, be giving her input and her ideas, and just listening to her for a little while today. I was kind of excited. I thought, wow, she turned out okay. So I'm excited to do that next week. Let me, let's see here. I wonder if I need to do a nudge on Facebook really fast. Let's see what I can do here. Yeah, it's been a busy summer, huh? And not in always not in a good way. It's been crazy. And Karina, I just gave your link. If you don't know, Karina and her husband, they grow coffee in Hawaii. And I saw today, Karina, a real estate listing for a 4-acre little plantation and a house, and it was I guess near Hilo, and it was like, oh, don't have $1 million for that. So let me see here. Copy link address. Let me just do this really quick on Facebook, and then we'll be ready to go.
I have my phone, my microphone mute because I am in town today and waiting for my car to be serviced. So thank you. And I am going to continue muted until I am able to get inside my truck because it's noisy here and I don't want to interrupt the
That is fine. We missed you. We had our Survival Mom Sisterhood chat today.
Yeah, but it was 6 a.m. here and I was already at home getting ready for coming to town, and I got late to join the call. That's
yeah.
How was your family?
Let's see, live on Facebook. Let me do this. Next. Okay. I'm doing this in our kitchen. I'm seeing that my daughter's getting ice out of the freezer. There we go. Oh, hold on. I did add a title. Take care of that later. We're connecting with Facebook, so we'll be live on Facebook. The nice thing about using the Zoom link, though, is that I can see your questions, and it's trickier when I go to Facebook for that. So it's not very easy to go back and forth. But let me just make sure that we're on Facebook, and then we will, yes, we are. Awesome. All right, let's see who else we need to admit into this group. So we have, the world has changed a lot. I know that for some people who are watching this live or who will watch it on a replay at some point, you never dreamed that you would seriously be considering homeschooling. And I know how intimidating homeschooling can be and sounds. The truth of the matter, it's a little bit like when I first learned to ride a two-wheeler bike. My dad would take me out 2 or 3 times, and he would be holding onto the seat, and I would be pedaling. I had training wheels, and I would be pedaling down the sidewalk. And then one day he said, let's take the training wheels off. So we took the training wheels off. And I remember riding down on my bike on 8th Place in Phoenix, and I was riding. My dad was right behind me holding the seat, and when I looked back at him, he wasn't there. He was like 20 or 30 feet or yards behind me, and I had gone that whole way by myself. That's how homeschooling is. It really is. My daughter wanted me to emphasize that there's no perfect way to homeschool. There is no one-size-fits-all. And I think the one thing I had to get over, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about my background, but the one thing I had to get over was that there was just one way to do it. I was a classroom teacher. So for a classroom teacher, if I was going to teach math or I was going to be teaching a reading lesson, I had a specific lesson to follow. I had X number of minutes to fit it in. It was very, very, very much cookie cutter. I mean, that was what it was. You just you're just stamping out those cookies all day long, spelling and math and science and social studies and recess, lunch, and it's like that all day long. Homeschooling isn't the cookie cutter type. And at a point, you have to just relax and say, there's no one holding me up on my bicycle. I'm going to do, I'm just going to do this. And some of the stuff I'm going to share today, I'll be sharing next week. I'm going to do a longer session all about homeschooling, and I'm scheduling that. I'll be putting this out in emails. I'll be putting this out on Facebook and social media, but it's going to be Wednesday, July 8th at 2 p.m. Central. And I'll be going into more detail at that time, and there'll be more time for questions and so on. But as I was reading homeschool questions on Facebook, it seems to me, my camera pushed back a little bit, it just seemed to me that what I was hearing again and again and again was the need for the answer. What is the way to do it? How do I do it? You know, I have 2 kids, and one of them is, special needs. How do I do this? And I just want you to go back to my little story about riding the bicycle. You jump in, you pedal, you have some support, and then before you know it, you're looking back weeks, you're looking back months, you're looking back years, and you realize, I'm a homeschooler. So real quick, my background, I graduated from college and I went directly into the classroom. I taught 7th and 8th grade at a middle school up in Page, Arizona. Page is right on the border of Utah and Arizona. About half my students were Navajo, and about half of them lived on the reservation, a number of them in hogans with no electricity. Before they would come to school in the mornings, they would have to go and let out the goats and take care, and go to grandma's hogan and make sure that she had a fire for whatever she needed. And then they would walk long distances where the bus would pick them up. So I had a really interesting mix of students the 5 years, I think it was 5 years that I taught there. After that, I moved back down to Phoenix, and I taught 4th grade there. And my 4th grade classroom was a self-contained, which meant that I taught everything. And so I think my first year, other teachers and I would trade off, where I would do the social studies teaching, and my kids would go to another teacher for science, and we would rotate. But after a year or 2 of that, I wanted to try self-contained. So I saw maybe that was the rebel in me way back then. I didn't have kids, but I like to have the flexibility and the versatility. I didn't like being stuck into 45 minutes of social studies. Now put that away. Now it's time for everybody to line up and we're going to go to recess. It was just, that's not how real learning happens in the real world. But that's how it is supposedly happens in the public school setting. So I taught 4th grade self-contained for a couple of years, and then I moved on and I wanted a new challenge, and I became a trainer. And so my job at that point was to teach specific instructional skills to teachers. My title was Instructional Program Specialist, and visit classrooms. And if there was like a new teaching method that would come out, I would learn it, and then I would go and model it for teachers, and I would teach workshops and so on. So all that to say, I floundered as a homeschooler. Honest to God truth. Okay. I mean, I thought, wouldn't you think that someone with that background, teaching different ages, different kinds of students, being teaching teachers, observing teachers, and helping them become better, you would think that that lady, she'll have no problem homeschooling. The truth was, I really struggled with homeschooling, and I don't know if I can even put my finger on it, but it was challenging. And I have a theory that the parents for whom homeschooling, becomes easier, total theory, I don't know if it's true or not, but are the parents who just really didn't like school. Public school, the public school setting, the classroom, the strict, rigid schedule, the artificiality. It's very artificial. The classroom is very artificial. The division of kids by ages, as though every single 7-year-old is exactly alike and can, learn at the same pace. Very artificial. But it was a challenge for me. And so I want to say that if school didn't work for you, then homeschooling might really just do well for you as the parent or the grandparent, whoever's doing the instruction, because you already know, hey, big textbooks, daily quizzes, tests, it didn't work for me. Why do I think it would be the best for my kid? And so maybe you would be the one to say, we're not going to do textbook-based education. My kids didn't even know literally what a textbook was until they were maybe in 5th or 6th grade. And so we just used other resources. So I'm going to look at my notes here. And for those of you that are on Facebook, hello. If you're on Facebook and you want to be here where I can see your questions and comments, you can click on the link. It's on my Facebook page. I also posted the link in Survival Mom Sisterhood, the paid group. I posted the link in We Are Survival Moms and Survival Mom Bootcamp. So if you want to be a part of the, kind of more of the live call, this is where I can see your questions, and it's a little easier to interact. So here's my number one tip. And my number one tip is for you to start homeschooling right now. If you wait until August or you wait until a certain date in September, you're going to be sorry. You talk about pressure. Right now, you're really not under that much pressure. Your kids know it's summer vacation. Your kids know, hey, it's been wonky. You know, I might not go back to public school or private school in the fall. Right now, you have time. It's a relaxed environment. You are not under any pressure. If you try something and it's really difficult and not much fun at all, so what? You know, I would just say start homeschooling now. And the main point is a couple of things, is for you to just say to yourself, okay, Monday I'm coming, you know, Monday's coming. I'm going to start homeschooling Monday. You're just going to start like with one thing. Okay. One thing. And it could be just say, kids, today, you know, we're going to have lunch, and at lunch at, you know, at 1 o'clock, we're going to sit around and I'm going to read some books to you. I'm going to read a story to you. That to me is the easiest way to homeschool, and I'll explain more about that in just a moment. So set it up, just one thing. The one thing could be just going outside in your backyard and saying, let's see how many different leaves we can find. I want you to see if you can find 10 different looking leaves. And what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can figure out what kind of plants these are. Well, that's science. What if you take a leaf, and depending on the age of your kid, you know, you get a little sharp, you know, little X-Acto knife or something, and you cut it apart and you look at, these are the veins. Kids, they have a natural curiosity. You don't have to say, we're doing school now. And you might say, you know, hey, try to rub the, you know, let's break this leaf in half and let's rub it on paper. What do you think that green stuff is? Why don't we go on the computer and let's see what that green stuff is inside a leaf? Or let's see how many different kinds of rocks we can collect. So it can be very, very, very simple. And children have, and I think we seem to lose this a lot of times as adults, they have a natural affinity for nature. They just love being outside. They love nature. And the more that you can nurture that, where they're spending time outside, they're curious about things like weather. You know, what about the next time that it looks like it's going to rain? You go out and you take a look at the clouds and then say, did you know those clouds actually have a scientific name? Kids love it when they know they're learning something meaningful. Okay, here's a story that I tell. When I was a teacher, I would say to parents, you know, what do your kids say about, you know, about being in 4th grade with me? Well, they come home and I ask them what they did, and they said nothing. Have your kids or grandkids ever told you, you know, if you say, what'd you do in school today? Nothing. Really? So you were there for 6 hours, 7 hours, you did nothing. Well, you know, that's not exactly right? But here's my theory about that. They didn't learn anything meaningful to them. They may have filled out a dozen workbooks. They may have had a spelling test. They may have had, you know, sat down and have to read through, you know, paragraphs in a science textbook. But it wasn't meaningful to them. Now contrast that with a family I knew in Phoenix. They knew that Thanksgiving was coming up. So at some point months earlier, they bought a turkey. They raised their turkey. The kids learned how to feed the turkey and how to take care of the turkey. And sure enough, you know, it's coming. The turkey was their Thanksgiving dinner. They learned how to butcher the turkey. They learned the parts of the turkey. They learned how to cut it apart. They learned how to roast the turkey. Now, you ask a kid like that, what did you do today? Dang, you know, we killed the turkey. We cut it apart. I'm not saying that that's what you have to do, but those are the kinds of meaningful experiences. Going out, and how many different colors of rocks can you collect? You know, we have 5 trees, we have 20 trees in our backyard or at the park. You know, do we even know what names those are? Most adults would not know. So by doing something just simple and enjoyable, as easy as that, you know, read aloud time, a nature time, I'm off my notes, but those are just some of the things that you can begin implementing. They really are school subjects. They are. You know, checking out the weather, or, you know, let's look on this app and let's see exactly what time, you know, sunset happens. Okay, let's go outside. You know, sunset is supposed to happen at, you know, 7:53. All right, let's watch the sun. It's set. It's 7:53. Okay, now what does that mean? You know, where did the sun go? And have a lesson in astronomy. Meaningful, significant learning. They really are going to learn and remember that. Let me check my notes real quick. As you begin doing school right now, you're going to gain confidence, and you'll realize this is a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And also as you go, we're going to kind of finish up our time here with some more information about this, but you're going to see what works and what doesn't work. Lisa, it did not work for me to have my 4 kids, all different ages, and trying to corral them for a read aloud time. That's something valuable to know, but you won't know that until you try. All right. And you may need to change the book. You may need to change the subject of the book, the readability of it up or down. You may need to just make some adjustments, but you need, right now is kind of a sandbox for you. It's your summertime sandbox. You can experiment. You can try different things. You can go online and do a search for your town's name and then homeschool. Houston, homeschoolers. Atascocita, homeschoolers, and see what kind of local groups that you can just connect with. And maybe just eavesdrop, maybe just be a lurker as you read what other families are doing and what their plans are for the fall. But I think it's really important for you, Mom, since most of you are going to be the mom in charge, it's most important for you to begin believing in yourself and just gaining confidence. And you can do that very simply. I also believe if you can get a handle and teach these 2 things to your kids, so important. I'm going to say this, it's so important, but this is so important. If you can nurture their love of learning at any age, don't you wish as an adult you had this love of learning where you just wanted to read on everything? There are adults like that. There are grandmas and grandpas like that. They want to read, they want to learn. But for a lot of us, that kind of was killed. For me, I loved history. For years, I would read everything I could get my hands on in history. And it took one history professor at a junior college to kill my interest in history for years. I mean, the class was just like the worst. And I was like, well, I don't think I have it in me to take another history class. And I don't know that I ever did. So we want to nurture love of learning. We want them to be enthusiastic. You want to learn more about coyotes? They saw a coyote cross the street. Well, what do you know about coyotes? Just ask them, what do you know about coyotes right now? Let's make a quick list. All right, when we get home, we're going to go online or we're going to find a book and we're going to read everything we can about coyotes. And we're going to see if we can make this list twice as long. Kids really are, they're also natural competitors. And so that gives a little bit of a motivation. You know, how long can I make my list about coyote facts? So the things that are around them really utilize those. But if you nurture that love of learning, then it just makes your life easier as a homeschooler. And the second thing that will make your life easier is to develop independent learners. Develop independent learners. If mom has to be there for every subject and provide instruction for absolutely everything, you're not really developing an independent learner. So here's how it worked for us, and it's probably different for other people. By the time my daughter got to 8th grade, she was making her own weekly homeschool schedules. So we used a program, I'm going to put it over here in chat, and I'm going to be referring to the site again. We used Ambleside Online. We use this website, Ambleside Online, and it would give us a schedule like by month or by week. So I gave her permission to take a look. Hey, honey, we're in week 13. Go look to see what's in week 13, and you just figure out if you're going to do things on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if you want to do work on the weekend, whatever. Well, I would work with her on, some things like Shakespeare, and we would read that together. Or we would work on, art. There was like kind of an art appreciation type component of this curriculum. So we would do some things together, but she began more and more to do it on her own. She would make her own schedule, and I was there. You become like scaffolding. You really are like a you are a human scaffold. So initially, when they're young, you're there every step of the way. But then you might say, you know what, instead, you're doing really well in math. I'd like for you to go and I'd like for you to work on this lesson on your own today. And gradually, the scaffolding is removed until you really have an independent learner. I cannot even tell you how valuable that has been to her as a college student. She pretty much did her own independent work through most of high school. And when she did her first year of college, it was the same exact thing. She was totally unintimidated by college work. In fact, some of it was probably easier than some of her homeschool stuff. So the 2 things, nurture the love of learning at every age, and then develop independent learners. And by the way, even though I worked in public school for quite a few years, I'm not a big fan. Public school does not nurture a love of learning. and it does not create independent learners. Very independent, very dependent on the teacher. What do I do? Can I ask a question now? What do I do next? Asking permission, it pretty much, throughout the entire day and week. And that's just trained, you get trained where you're the opposite of independent. So that's not the kind of homeschool you want. So let me give you a couple of super easy first steps. I've already mentioned daily read aloud time. If you can just tie, some kind of a time to that on a schedule, you have freedom, mom, dads, you have freedom. I mean, you can do that daily read aloud first thing in the morning while they're eating breakfast, or you can do it on a car ride. My daughter reminded me that we had friends that drove, they owned businesses and they were in their car for hours and hours and hours every week. And their daughter would do homeschool in the back seat. So you have more freedom than you realize. But until you start just jumping in, you're not going to really realize just how much freedom you do have. So with a daily read aloud, tie it to a daily time. And if you can make it regular, at least initially, that will begin creating this kind of a pattern to the day. So maybe week one, all you do is just have, at 1 o'clock or whatever time you choose, mom, we're going to have daily read aloud time. Next week, we're going to have the daily read aloud time. And what would be fun? We're actually going to go outside. And you can pick maybe Monday, you're going to look at leaves. Tuesday, you're going to look at flowers and try to figure out what kind they are. Wednesday, you're going to look at rocks. Thursday, you're going to look at clouds. Friday, I don't know, you're going to sit out there and maybe everyone's going to sketch something. So it can be really very easy. I think a lot easier than maybe you think. But if you just do that, pretty soon you'll end up with, maybe by August, maybe you're doing 2 or 3 or 4 subjects. And I put subjects in quotation marks, subjects a day. And when your official day of school does arrive in the fall, whenever that date might be, then you just kind of roll over and say, okay, now we're going to be incorporating this textbook or this reading book or whatever. Audible books, if you don't want to read out loud or you can't for one reason or another, Audible books are fine. Have an audible book in the car. And if your car ride is going to be maybe 20 minutes or more, just crank it up. We listened to the entire Percy Jackson series and then the other series by that author, a lot of them just in the car. If we were going to go on a camping trip, we would just always have that going. So that is another way of getting this in. So they're getting literature. And I don't consider Percy Jackson to really be literature, but it is, it's a fun, definitely, fun to read, and kids are learning about, Greek and Roman mythology. But Audible books have that going in the car. Ambleside Online, let me see if I can do a screen share with you. Let me see if I can do a screen share. I'm just going to show you the website. Here we go, Ambleside Online. So this is what Ambleside Online looks like. And even if you don't use the curriculum, and even if you go with your K-12 curriculum that your school district provides, this is going to give you a lot of resources, a lot of great book suggestions. And let's say that you get into a subject with the public school curriculum. Let's say you're going to go with their virtual K-12 or whatever, it's named in your district. You think, what? My kid really wants a lot more with science or a lot more with nature. Or we have this election coming up. I really want them to know more about government. Ambleside Online is a fantastic resource. And what I would suggest you do is just a real quick resource is, hold on, if you click on curriculum, and you can learn more about what Ambleside Online is. It's just, I love it. It was the curriculum that really fit our family best. And by the way, on my blog, thesurvivalmom.com, go in the search box and type homeschool or homeschooling, and there are a lot of articles there about different aspects of it. But if you come down here, year 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through 12, these loosely, very loosely, are connected to grades. But if the reading material tends to be a little bit more advanced, but I loved it because when my daughter was maybe 7 and 8, she was reading the original Mary Poppins, the original Little Women, the original books instead of, just an easier version of it. So I remember her reading the original Peter Pan. So let's go to year 3, and I'm going to scroll down here. It'll take some, this website is not super easy to figure out, but you can see that they have the subjects here. Every single day, they have you do penmanship or copy work. Copy work is, I didn't mean to get into Ambleside Online so much, but copy work is just where your child copies on paper in handwriting, in printing or cursive, whichever, something from a book. So maybe they're reading Peter Pan, and you say, okay, see these two sentences, I just want you to copy it directly on paper. And there's more explanation of why that works. But they're practicing their penmanship, they're modeling after something that has correct grammar, correct punctuation, just a lot of, everything that goes into really good and effective writing. They're learning that while they do the copy work. Charlotte Mason was very brilliant. But what I wanted to show you, if you scroll, you're going to start seeing titles of books. All right. So there's geography. My son and I had a great time reading through Marco Polo. That was wild. Really an amazing book. Math, poetry, literature. You can take a look at this. Tales from Shakespeare. If you have Shakespeare plays that you can get to. I'll never forget taking my kids to one, and one of the guy that played Puck was almost entirely nude. My kids got a kick out of that. But you can scroll through any of these reading selections. Don't feel you have to be tied down to year 1 or year 2 or year 3. So maybe someone who might be 14 or 15, some of these books here might be very appropriate for them. So I just wanted to show Ambleside Online and what some of the choices were there for you. Let's see. And here is something else. My son was not into academics. When he was a baby, I described him as damp and loud. He's almost 19 and he is still damp and loud. He is physical, he sweats a lot, he's loud. But you know what? All those years of reading out loud to him, his vocabulary, he's down the hall, his vocabulary is stupendous. And he uses some very high-level, impressive words in his everyday conversation. And I never change my facial expression. If he says something, I'm just like, it's just perfectly ordinary for a teenager to talk like that. But that helped his speaking vocabulary. Therefore, it helped his written vocabulary. And just those hours and hours and hours of having correct grammar and correct sentence structure modeled for him helped a great deal with his reading skills and so on. So read aloud, you and I might think, oh, it's just kind of fun, read aloud, but there is a lot that happens in a kid's brain while you do that. That's one of the easiest things to do. Nature study, I mentioned that. It can be another very, very easy thing depending on where you live. And you know what? It could be just looking out the window. How many growing things, how many living things can you see outside our window? It doesn't necessarily have to be traipsing to a park or making a big deal about going to a beach or something. It can be all of those things. You can incorporate it on car drives. Sit in your, let's put some peanuts outside, or let's get some sunflower seeds. How many different birds can we see today? And now let's look up and see what they're like. I know my daughter and son, when they were reading a book about birds, they were just astounded to find out that a chickadee weighs something like 2 quarters or 3 quarters, something like that. And now whenever they're older, 18 and 21, but whenever they see a chickadee, they know exactly how much that chickadee weighs in quarters. But the nature study is an easy one. Another one is, as you kind of get into this, you're going to notice that your kids gravitate to something. The coyote. Okay, let's say they see a coyote. Hey, that's a coyote, kids. Or they hear it at night. That's a coyote. Mom, it's a wolf. No, I'm pretty sure it's a coyote. Let's look it up and let's see if we can find a recording of a coyote on YouTube or somewhere on the internet. And now, well, what do coyotes eat? Do we need to be afraid of coyotes, Mom? What do I need to do if I come across a coyote? And all of a sudden, it's like you're getting questions, right? Questions about coyotes, questions about bees. They got stung by a bee. Questions. Well, take that opportunity. I call that a high interest subject or a high interest study, and take that opportunity just to start digging deep. You don't have to spend hours, you don't have to spend days. You can if you want. I have a nephew who was so fascinated by tornadoes that he was just like fixated on tornadoes for a big chunk of his childhood. So it can go, however long, but you want to just kind of go with the flow with them and help them dig deep. And keep in mind, Public school, they don't get to dig deep on anything, which is really sad, really, really sad. So you have the chance to provide them with an amazing education that is so rich in literature and experiences and appreciation of nature. I like Ambleside Online, and believe me, I don't get paid nothing. I feel like I should have signed up, you know, and get a percentage of, but they don't sell anything. I think sometimes if you get Amazon books through there, they get an affiliate link, which is probably 2% of every sale. But they will also, they're very, very sensitive to tight budgets. So when you look, whether you use Ambleside Online or not, you can go through there, and they each year will tell you, you can get this on free, you know, get this book free. You can download it for free, or it's available at this website. So, but a high interest level or high interest study is just what they happen to be most curious about today, and be willing to be flexible and just run with that. Now remember, this is summer. You're not doing school. They're not learning about coyotes because this is school. Okay, we're just learning about coyotes because we saw one, and now we want to know, should we be afraid of it? Or we're out camping and we hear this, you know, it sounds like a wolf. I know it's a wolf, Mom. Well, let's find out. Let's find out for sure. Okay, and going back to the idea of learning that is significant and meaningful to them versus circling every noun in 40 sentences on a worksheet. You know, and we wonder why our kids really don't love to learn after they hit 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. Okay. I have some other stuff here, but the high interest, so very, very easy, just reading. You can gear your read alouds or your audible books or audiobooks to what they're interested in. You know, are they, for some reason, has something just triggered their interest in Roman mythology? Has something triggered their interest in, you know, countries in Europe? My son went through a time when he was watching every single Rick Steves video on YouTube, all about every European country and capital city that there was. So you want to just open the doors to that. You want to everything, you know, and like basically, moms, you are, you're the scaffold, but you're the facilitator in this role, really. No one expects you to know everything, so please don't be intimidated and think you have to be a science expert or a math expert. I'm going to let you in a little secret. When I taught public school, the kind of the laughing joke among some of the teachers, and I'm not going to say all of them because a teacher's going to hear this and say, no, that's wrong, but you just need to stay one chapter ahead of the kids. So if you're teaching, you know, U.S. history for the first time, don't think you have to be an expert. You just have to have read through the chapter and know what's coming, and you can facilitate the learning through there. So I want you to feel confident that you can do that because, of course, you probably already have. And I would bet that as I've been talking, maybe some of you are even realizing we've done a lot of homeschooling. I just never thought of it that way. You never called it homeschooling. So a few last points. You're in a sandbox. It's just playtime. Okay? Nothing you're doing officially really counts. Now, if you see your kid just whipping through, you know, book after book after book, you might say, well, you know what? I think I can officially say we're teaching reading right now. By the way, have you ever taught someone to read? That can be really intimidating. I never taught someone to read, never. I found a book. It came out in 1986, and it is called, I put it on here. Oh, I think I added it after I printed my notes. It is called Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. Teach your child to read. It's maybe $18 or so on Amazon. Teach your child to read in 100 easy lessons. There are 2 things I can promise you. Your kid is going to learn to read. The other thing I can promise you is those little lessons are damn boring. Okay? But who cares? You know, you want your child to learn to read. And so you might be sitting there and thinking, this is kind of boring. Yes, but I will tell you what. I don't even know how my son learned to read. We were maybe halfway through, maybe on lesson 50, and he was reading. I'd been reading aloud to him for years, but he was reading. I don't even know how he really learned to spell because his sister loved the spelling list. She loved the spelling test. He did not so much. And so I didn't really do as much with teaching how to spell with him, and yet he can sit down and write college papers, and that kid can spell. I did buy him Grammarly, though. $100, and it'll correct everything. But in real life, learning how to spell and the correct grammar, that is actually priceless, because you won't always have a computer or, the autocorrect or whatever, there is a crutch. But it's amazing what they pick up. So here are a few things you in addition to just kind of easing into this. Figure out how they learn best. My daughter is an amazing auditory learner. She can memorize movie scripts. It's amazing what, that's just the way her brain, that's how she learns. My son, he has to be sweating and loud to learn stuff, okay? Damp and loud. What's their attention span like? And what can you do during the summer to maybe expand that attention span a little bit? And what speed do they learn? So you have someone and you're just kind of, for fun, you're just throwing out math problems, right? And they're getting them, bam, 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 bam. And you think, I think I'm going to start printing out some worksheets. I don't love worksheets, but for math, once they understand the concept, they're great for just building, speed and, fluidity, where it just becomes automatic. Automaticity is a good word that applies to that. But you're thinking, you know what? I think that I don't want to start her in 4th grade math. I'm going to, they have tests, different kinds of pre-tests online, where you can, figure out if is your kid, in this grade of math, or are they ready for pre-algebra? And you may have someone, a learner, that can be doing math 2-3 years or more ahead of their grade level, okay? And by the way, a sign of a homeschooler is they have no idea what grade they're in. If you've ever met a homeschooler and say, hey, what grade are you in? Just be prepared for them to turn and say, Mom, what grade am I in? I've actually had that conversation for real. But at what speed do they learn? That'll maybe help you, think about the fall when it's official, and say, I would think maybe she could work much faster at math than her brother, or vice versa. And that's good knowledge for you. It also can tell you what time of day they learn best. If you have someone that's just naturally an early riser, maybe you could set up your schedule where they could wake up, do their morning routine, and then they could just sit down, and maybe they could have an hour or 2 hours of school done by the time the rest of the family gets going. So pay attention to morning people and nighttime people. You have that flexibility. Here's a tough one. If you have more than one kid, how do they overlap in some ways, in skills and in interest levels? So maybe if the whole family is interested in something, let's say you're gonna go on vacation to the Grand Canyon. Well, that could become a science unit, if you want to call it that, where everybody is just researching, and maybe they're researching at different levels, but you're all on the same subject. So one way to manage multiple kids is to find areas, the high interest areas that I mentioned before, and everybody is just kind of digging in, but at their own levels. All right, and it would count as science, it would count as history or art or whatever. And I had some really good notes. If you have younger kids during this sandbox time, you can kind of figure out how can I structure my day where when my homeschooled kid needs me to be there, what can I have for the younger kid who is, just, they want to be involved, but what can I have for them? So maybe that's a time for, maybe a learning video game or an app that teaches something, or maybe that's where they could have some special picture books. I'll never forget the time when my daughter was probably in 1st grade, maybe kindergarten. We were doing math, and my son was climbing over my back as I was sitting at the kitchen table, hanging over my head, and he was grabbing things at the table. So I know what it's like to have to deal with that. So just you want to think, can you structure your schedule? Or maybe that's nap time or some kind of a quiet time for the youngers while you have your, certain subjects where you really do need to be there side by side. As you move into this, there will be some subject areas and some topics that you don't necessarily even have to be there directing it. Let's see if there was anything else. My daughter pointed out to me that one thing that inspired her was that I would be fully engaged. And she said, Mom, you always showed me that you were interested in whatever I was doing. And that communicates something, I didn't realize it, but I just now dawned on me, that really communicates the importance of what they're doing. So if they want to come in and they want to tell you all about the coyote they saw, or the pictures of the coyote that they saw, they found, the video on, on YouTube. If you have to just kind of say, I'll be with you in just, in 15 minutes and set a time or something. But they need to know that you're fully engaged with that. And you value learning. you value what they're doing. And then you become kind of a co-learner, which is kind of cool. Model reading yourself. My husband isn't much of a reader, but when he does read, and we're sitting, let's say in the family room and all of us are reading, I've noticed that my son is reading a book. My son doesn't necessarily love to sit down and read. He does now. He's reading books about how to get rich. So he's highly motivated. Someday he will be damp, loud, and rich. But model reading yourself. And remember that pretty much almost every subject that they're going to learn ever in their lifetime as lifelong learners rests on reading. It really does. It's going to rest on that that really solid foundation of not only reading, but have a high level of comprehension and then having some level of enjoyment of reading. And this is something that you can set the stage for now. I think I'm going to wind down because we'll kind of revisit some of this next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Central, and I will send out another Zoom link like this. Remember, the best way to participate is to follow the Zoom link, but I will also be sharing this on my Survive Mom Facebook page. Any questions? If you're on Facebook, it's really hard for me to flip back and forth to see questions. But if you post them, I can maybe take a look a little bit later for you. All right. So what are you going to do? You're going to start homeschooling Monday. Even if homeschooling is just finding a really, really interesting something on Netflix or Amazon Prime, it can be that. But if you're going to do that, make sure that no one also has their phone in front of them. There are no tablets, nothing. You're really just focusing on that. Because your point, the whole thing is really kind of setting the stage, kind of you're enjoying the learning along with them. And to a point, it's kind of decoupling your brain and theirs from the public school model, where there's only a certain way to do this. I'm going to finish with a story. I had a friend years ago in Phoenix, and she was excited. She told me that she was starting to homeschool. Cool. I had homeschooled my kids by that time for, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, 5 years. So I walk in, and her little boy is sitting at the dining room table, kind of like where I'm sitting now. And he was, I think, in 3rd grade. So that would have made him probably 8. And over to the side of him was a stack of textbooks that were almost as high as his head. And I was just like, ooh, it made me sad. It made me sad for her that she thought that was how she had to homeschool. And it made me sad for him to think that all of the time, he would always associate school and learning with all those masses of textbooks and workbooks. They have their place. But if you take a look at the selections in the different topics, the different subject areas on Ambleside Online, you'll see how so much can be learned and kids never touch a textbook. It really is amazing. So that's all I have to say. And thanks. I've been with you 45 minutes today. Hope it was helpful. My daughter and I will both be back together next Wednesday. We're going to work on putting some notes together over the weekend. She lived with me as the homeschooled kid for 21 years. Now she's in college. So you'll get her perspective on different things as well as mine. So good luck, everybody. Feel free to ask me questions or email, and I'm here to support you. Bye.